for our colleagues in Africa and in Europe. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much again for coming. We're very happy to see you again on our weekly Nile Talk Forum, where we invite professionals and experts in the area of Nile River Basin and also other transboundary water management issues. So far we're able to host previously about 3, and then now today we are on our 4th seminar, which will be presented shortly. And as you know, this forum brings experts in the Nile and other transboundary river issues to discuss mainly about experience sharing and also how to really go around and share the common good among the basin countries. And as you know, Nile and the Nile River Basin has been in the news for a long time, and we are trying our best to bring all point of view and science to this forum so that we can have actually a very good discussion about the issues at stake. So our organizers, it's actually FI University of Environment, where I am at, is the lead organizer, and our collaborators and also co-organizers are the UNESCO Chair on Sustainable Water Resource, Addis Ababa Institute of Technology at Addis Ababa University, Bahar Dar Institute of Technology at Bahar Dar University in Ethiopia, the Nile Basin Discourse, which is a basin-wide organization working on various issues of the Nile. And then the Water and the Land Resource Center at Addis Ababa University is also our collaborator. And thank you very much for their cooperation and collaboration on this. So today's seminar is going to be given by Dr. Wossenu Abtew. I will introduce him briefly before we go that. So it's going to be on downstream and upstream relationships and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, particularly on filling and operations and agreement flexibility. So Dr. Wossenu will actually bring his own point of view and his research on this topic. So for those of you who don't know Dr. Wossenu has been in this area working on the Nile and related issue for a long time. He's a professional civil engineer, and also he's a diplomat in water resource engineering. As a principal engineer, he worked at the district, at the South Florida Water Management District for over 30 years before he retires as a principal engineer. So to say a little bit more about it, he is a professional civil engineer and also a water resource engineer certified by the American Academy of Water Resource Engineers. As I said, over 30 years, close to 30 years, he worked as a district, the South Florida Water Management District, which is the largest water management district here in Florida, as a principal engineer. And currently he is a consultant in water resource and environmental area. He has got his own firm and he works as a consultant. His experience includes in hydrology, water management, environmental restoration, reservoir sizing and operation, but also he has also worked a lot on the Nile River Basin and GERD. And as part of that, he has published a number of books. We also collaborated on a number of publications. He has a book on GERD. He has also books on Nile River Basin, evapotranspiration, extreme hydrology, and landscape dynamics. And also this year, he's also the co-editor of one of the books that we are writing on the Nile, which is Nile and GERD, particularly the past, present, and the future, which will be submitted to Springer sometime in a couple of months or so. He has also published in many journal papers, book chapters, conference readings, and also he has been very active in organizing conferences and workshops in the time that I have collaborated with him. So today's topic, as I said, is going to be downstream upstream relationships and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, filling and operations and agreement flexibility. And our moderator will be Dr. Sam Mumagas, who is a professional engineer and currently an international consultant and also an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut. Before he moves to the US, he was an associate professor at Addis Ababa Institute of Technology sometime. And for those of you who know, Samu has been very active in the Nile research for a long time. And he's one of the most knowledgeable person when it comes to Nile issues. Now with that, let me just do some reminder, and then I will leave the floor for Samu to moderate this. So the presentation will be recorded, video recorded, and please mute your microphone for the duration of the presentation. When the time comes, then you'll be allowed to actually unmute and ask questions or comments. And if you have anything to say through a chat, you can send chats to the moderator for questions or comments. Otherwise, for the duration of the presentation, please unmute yourself. Even you can also even switch off your video so that we can actually focus on the presentation. With that, now I will leave the floor for Samu, and Samu will lead that. Candice, maybe you can allow Dr. Wossenu to control the presentation, or maybe make him a co-host so that he can share his screen.
Yep, they're both co-hosts. Yep.
He's a co-host?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Wossen, you can manage your presentation from there.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, can I say good morning, everybody? Those of you who live in this part of the world, good morning, and those of you who live in the eastern part of the continent, the world, Africa, Europe, good afternoon. Thank you, Asafa, for generous introduction. And I'll be moderating this session, and I will directly invite Dr. Wossenu. And Dr. Wossenu, you have 40 minutes. And after that, we'll have 20 minutes for discussion and session. The whole session will be 1 hour. I think you can continue now. And if you have questions, some of you, you can put the question on the chat section, or you can also raise your hands. Accordingly, we can attend in the order it comes. Thank you very much. Please continue your presentation.
All right, thank you for the introduction. My topic, as stated earlier, will be about the Nile, GERD, and agreements around GERD filling and operation. So outline of my talk, I will basically start with global freshwater impending shortage, and that's how that is related to the Nile Basin, and go into GERD negotiations, especially go in detail in the Washington, D.C. proposal, and then discuss about dam operation flexibility needs and the use of climate prediction. And I'll end up with my views on what the future of GERD negotiations will look like. So in order to understand all this conflict, war, and fighting on water, we have to see what is coming or what is right now there globally on freshwater availability. There will be 40% deficit of freshwater by 2030. So this influences on what happens in different basins, and the Nile is also directly affected right now by that. As a result, out of basin water transfer, direct or indirect.
Wossenu, can I interrupt you? Can you make it on a presentation mode? I can see only, I can see the other slides here.
But there will be people who will not see it when I do that. That's why I'll if anybody complains, we will go back and check if everybody can see this slide. Can all of you see it? All right.
I think, you can make it, you can go to the display settings and the drop down and choose the first one to make it larger.
Yeah, on the top, yeah.
It is large, it is full screen.
You go to the display settings on the left top side.
You see the middle one? The middle one, yeah, the middle one, the display settings.
It is full screen on my side. That's the problem. Is people might not see it. That's what. Can you see every one of you?
We're seeing your presenter mode, so that's probably because you're using two monitors. So you have to make sure that in the display settings, the monitor that's showing the slide is the one that is being shown to the Zoom. So
Yes.
if you go to display settings,
Okay.
I don't know if one of your monitors might show the display settings.
On the top, yeah.
Top.
And
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
it on.
And then quick swap. Yeah,
Swap, yes.
exactly.
All right.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Now you see it,
Yes, yeah.
but
Yes.
it is not full screen on mine. Okay. So basically, the value of water has increased, and here I have a graph on the left side, which shows the population growth in the three countries in the Eastern Nile, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. And as you see, there were constructions of dams along the way, and the value of water has increased right now. So that is the reason for all this water conflict is increasing population, increasing water demand, and as a result, the value of water has increased. So because of that, for the first time, water has been put on the NASDAQ on market for the first time. It has become a commodity, and it is being sold on a stock market. So the value of water has dramatically increased. And because of that investment, international capital is interested in the Nile Valley. Land and water grab are also part of water trading. For example, my understanding what is happening in Sudan is there is a lot of interest to expand Sudanese agriculture with international investment and pull the Nile water far from its location. And you can find on the internet some of the proposed plans, at least that are published on the internet. So, and now water has become a market commodity. That's why it is fighting for, and there is conflict right now on Nile water. And the upstream view, there is different views on the water. Upstream countries in Africa look at as a flow and flow, sharing the flow of river. But outside Africa and downstream, the right side curve, it is in terms of money, the value of water. From 1970, the critical time in the Nile Basin is Aswan Dam. Since then, interest or value in water has been increasing. This is my just rough estimate of 600 billion US dollars since 1970. You can use your own model and come up with any number. But the thing is, if upstream are thinking in a brotherly sharing of water, and downstream thinks about what money can be generated, and they don't want to share that with anybody. So this, you can see this discrepancy in the negotiations that are going on right now on the GERD dam. So when we see about negotiations, I think one very important point is who sets the agenda. With respect to GERD, it should have been Ethiopia who comes up with detailed operation plan of its own dam, and present to Sudan, fear or any concerns are about the dam. The GERD has not much to do with Egypt in terms of, it is the Sudan who should raise how that dam is operated. It is a hydropower dam that is built by Ethiopia. So the discussion should have been between Ethiopia and Sudan only. The introduction of Egypt should be for water sharing, basin water sharing purpose. So one of the, well, the biggest event in GERD negotiations was Washington, D.C. negotiation from November 2019 to February 2020. With 4 meetings, there was a big rush to come to agreement here in the United States that the 3 countries signed on how to operate and fill the gap. So we'll go through what that looks like. So basically, it has guaranteed flow for downstream and then dam filling and dam operation plan combined. There are 4 annexes A, B, C, D, and the reference for this plan is the United Nations Security Council, Egypt's June 19, 2020 letter. So you can find that whole plan, which is several pages as the link. So in terms of Nile Basin countries, we have to know who is upstream, who is downstream, and how much of the area is in the basin. How much of the area is in the basin is important. If there is a country which generates a lot of water, but a smaller portion of the drainage basin from its country, it can move water out of the basin. That might be a necessity to move water out of the basin for irrigation purposes. So now South Sudan is downstream of Ethiopia, upstream of Sudan. Sudan is upstream of Egypt and downstream of Ethiopia. This is very important currently and in the future. So this is the transboundary relationship physical locations, Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt, and Ethiopia and Sudan which are connected by the GERD, and the discussion should happen between Ethiopia flood concern or any other concern from the operation of the hydropower dam. And Sudan and Egypt have the same relationship. And in the past, currently, and the future, probably most of the water war will be between Egypt and Sudan, as a large portion of the water will be shared between the two. And it's just a resource issue. Either Egypt will have large farms in the Sudan, use the water there and take the product, or Sudan has to pass the water down. That is inevitable. So on these relationships, first we'll go to the right side. What exactly is the setup here in the Eastern Nile is there is a finite volume of water with some average and some variation year to year. That passes down, and there is a GERD in between Egypt before Sudan. And Sudan is currently has developed large irrigation areas and is planning to develop. Egypt has expanded use of the water, still developing. And Ethiopia yet to draw its share for irrigation purpose. Now the conflict is right here. Just pass the water, don't take anything out, your share. That is basically what is the hang up on the GERD negotiations, and the conflict between these 3 countries is exactly this. Does Ethiopia has the right to share some of its rivers water or no? So this simplifies the issue because a lot of money is being made out of that water. So unless you see it in terms of cash American dollars, it doesn't look like that much of any value. Water, this much volume, that much volume, but this is the exact situation. And international finance might be interested to develop the large area of Sudan by drawing this water further and further out. So those observers in the negotiations are not there just passing time or to avoid conflict between the countries. Everybody has interest in these waters. So now there are 2 models of relationship. If it is cooperation, you give in some of your interests and then you come to agreement. This has been done between other countries. But when it is hostility, agreements are hard to reach. These are things that is happening. Undermine upstream security, block access to the sea, undermine upstream development by blocking funds, covert and overt military engagement, which is currently going on, propaganda war, diplomatic war. And the result is no water or money sharing, expand your water use, undermine upstream water needs, stick to colonial treaties, and internationalize water use and water conflict. So the Eastern Nile is in this model right now. So how do you make agreement when you are fighting at the same time? That is the question that is there. Now, do you see the graph in the table? This is a graph in the table.
We see the graph, not the table.
So you guys are not seeing everything, I guess.
No, please continue.
I think I have to change the mode. Okay. All right. Okay. This is a graph, and we have discussed this graph already. Did you see this graph earlier? No?
Yeah, continue explaining this graph.
Okay, all right. From my side, this came earlier, but anyway, we'll discuss. This is the situation in the Eastern Blue Nile. There is a finite amount of water with some mean and variance. It comes down. Sudan has developed a large irrigation area, planning to develop more. Egypt, far more, and planning to develop more and turning the water into cash. And the GERD stands in the middle. Ethiopia has yet to take its share to develop. So the whole conflict is to stop Ethiopia from taking its share to irrigate water. That is basically the conflict in the Eastern Nile water negotiation. Now the Washington DC negotiation has guaranteed flow that has to go down past the GERD, and there are terms as drought, and prolonged periods of drought years. This table summarizes it. Basically, I'm not going to read every line. During filling, there is 37 or 40 billion cubic meter requirement of release. And if it is below that, you have to add from the reservoir what was stored in the reservoir. And the long-term operation has 37, 39, and 40. These numbers are not infrequent flow rates. For example, 37 billion happens 20% of the time, 39, 27% of the time, 40, 30% of the time. So it is not extremely low flow. And this was from 1965 to 2009. L9 flow, which is outflows the GERD. And we have to use recent data because recent data, the Blue Nile flow is non-stationary. As long as there is upstream abstraction and climate change, the data will be non-stationary, meaning the mean and the variance could change. So we have to use recent data only for purposes of water sharing. Now, the annex is a drought condition release matrix. Basically, I have here from 37 BCM to 20 BCM annual inflow into the GERD. As an example, for example, if the reservoir was at 618 and the lost flow, 20 billion cubic meter happened, then the reservoir has to release additional 9.7 billion cubic meter for a total of 29 billion cubic meter. That brings back to the water level to 6,008. 608, which means you have to go through a lot of things to come back, fill it up to its original level. So the penalty of releasing from the reservoir is so high, it is very hard to fill that reservoir, as I will show you later on. So the Annex B from that plan is the stage 1 filling, which has happened already the first year, 4.9 billion cubic meter, and the second year will happen this year, and probably it will be a wet year also. I will discuss that later on, and this will happen. And the limit on that was put was 31, if flow was 31 BCM, this will be postponed. And Annex C, Table 1, this is, as you know, how the filling will continue after the stage 1, the other portion of the third, fourth, and fifth year. This is in the plan. Now, inflows and prescribed releases and retentions during filling. As you can see, this is a release from GERD at 623 meter above sea level water level. If the maximum amount of inflow that is recorded, which is 70 billion cubic meter comes, you have to release 67.5 billion cubic meter. ET and seepage is estimated at 2 billion cubic meter. So what will be left is half billion cubic meter to move this water level up. So the plan should have been, when it is extremely wet, you store. So this is to show that earlier I showed you at the extreme drought, 20 BCM, you give out from the reservoir 9 BCM. At extremely wet condition, when 70 BCM is coming in, you don't fill the dam. Basically, you send the whole thing out. So under this kind of condition, you can, it will take quite a long time to fill the dam. I have some examples worked out. I'll show you later on. And on the right side, how much is retained? And as you can see, at 70 BCM, 623 meter water level, you have to retain only 2.5 BCM, 2 goes for ET and seepage, only half BCM as extreme wet condition. So this shows you in both drought and high flow conditions, the reservoir is at disadvantage. And GERD inflows during normal operation, there is a small change. It is about the same kind of, there is a small change rather than 67.5. Here, you release 66.9. It is not much different. So if it was at 623, it will stay at 623 during the extreme high inflow time during operation 2. So for 18 years, from 1979 to 1996, these are flows from L9, and the rules at Annex B, C, A, up to C for filling were run through, and if you started at 571 meter water level, after 18 years, you will end at 626. The dam is 640 is the maximum that you have to fill it to. So which means you are way down there by the end of the 18 years. And during operation time also 9 years were around 1997 to 1987. These years can happen again. So there is no argument that these are the extreme cases. And the rules are you apply Annex D with the 5-year drought conditions. If you start at 625 meter above sea level water level 1979, you'll end up at 585, 590 is the minimum level. So you can see this dam is not operating at optimum power generation kind of mode. Another example, just to show you that 70 inflow at 625, you have to release all 70. Evaporation and ET are about 2, so you end up going down. This is from the rule, because it is tables. It might not be easy to see like the graphs, but exactly if you are at 625 meters above sea level, the maximum flow comes to the reservoir, you'll end up going down in storage and water level. So that's no good. The result is this is because the reservoir is controlled from downstream. All those spreadsheets were developed only to fulfill the interest of downstream. And there is a historical literature research, and this is from the book we did, that if the reservoir, there is a requirement of doing a lot of things for downstream, then you can't generate optimal power. So where is the flexibility in dam operation and operation plan? Dam safety and emergency operation. One flexibility for the dam owner is he has to do anything that is necessary if there is an emergency for whatever reasons, too high flow, even too low flow, inflow, and any factors that has to be maximum flexibility should be there. Dam maintenance, yeah, any maintenance work required, it doesn't have to be, shouldn't be subject to downstream needs. Climate prediction and dam operation. We have a good experience here in South Florida, how climate prediction is applied to dam operation. I'll show you some slides. That has to be there. Is it going to be a wet year, hold water, release water? What is the best way to operate, to generate power based on the demand at the time? So if you have restrictions, rigid kind of agreement signed, then this flexibility will be gone. That's power demand and dam operation, hydropower dam operation have to be allowed to the operator. Irrigation needs and dam operation also are things that have to be considered. So climate teleconnection, climate prediction, and dam operation. We have here in South Florida an earthen dam, which is called Lake Okeechobee. It is the size of the GERD, but it is very shallow. But we do apply climate and climate prediction and short-term weather prediction to operate the dam. So we know that El Nino oscillation is linked as teleconnection to the Nile Basin rainfall during El Nino times. Drought is likely, La Nina times, above average rainfall is likely. And also there are publications that it is related to intertropical convergence zone and Indian Ocean dipole. So these indices have to be followed and have to be part of your decision making. For example, here in South Florida, this is a model I developed, which is tracks La Nina and El Nino, and it is in my website, updated every week. For example, now we are at the end of January, with February projected. This was the condition during 2009, 1951, 1956, 1950, 1893. So as we go to spring, that is the time, the best time to predict El Nino and La Nina, then it will take one of these paths. Most likely it will follow this. And if it goes to super La Nina, and we expect, it is likely that Blue Nile will be wet and it will be good time to fill the reservoir this year. So for me, in my website, I make the conclusion around here, what kind of system is developing. And also here in South Florida, the weather predictions, for example, this is the 3 months outlook of precipitation and temperature. This is part of the decision making into releasing or holding water in the reservoir. And one example from Lake Okeechobee, one thing about climate prediction is there is uncertainty. So the dam operator has to be allowed to make a mistake. You might predict La Nina, it might not turn out, you release your water, you hold your water, more water can come, or it can be El Nino, you release your water and you will have low water level. So anyway, here we apply using different models, estimate what the change on the lake level will be. For example, here, 0.41 feet, -1/10 of a foot, or 1/10 of a foot above. So the different models are applied, and the conclusion from all three is this dry season from January all the way to first part of May will be dry in South Florida, so the reservoir will be operated by conserving water. And one thing that is done here is, this is where we are right now, and these were the past La Nina years, because we expect there will be La Nina, and the lake's performance during that time. It varies because decision-making is involved, not only climate, but the general trend is that it is going down during the dry season. We have to conserve our water. So you can use climate prediction with the uncertainty. And now, what is the future of GERD negotiations, the way it is going on right now? Negotiations will drag and may not end. And the reason is always introducing legal clause that limits Ethiopia's using its watershed for irrigation upstream of GERD. And also, Egypt wants to guarantee this downstream flow, and this will be the cause of the disagreements. And the AU, currently the AU president, chairman, President Chairperson is changing to Democratic Republic of Congo's president, but he has stated that he supports Egypt on GERD issue, and such stated position makes neutrality questionable and under the AU discussion. And Sudan was insisting the expansion of the role of AU technical staff just before this change from South Africa to Democratic Republic of Congo. So what kind of technical staff does the AU has? And well, this has to be really looked at very well. And the current negotiation should be no direct or implied watershed right acquisition or denial in these discussions. GERD filling and operation plan that meets objectives of the dam, accommodating reasonable downstream concerns should be the subject of negotiation. What should a GERD filling and operation plan agreement contain? The GERD shall be operated to generate optimal power as determined by the dam owner. What is optimal? Reservoir operation guidelines should be developed with maximum flexibility. Climate forecast is essential to introduce in dam operation, knowing that there are uncertainties in prediction. Mutual cooperation in dam safety, data sharing, and management of extreme conditions is beneficial. And minimum environmental release can be accommodated in the plan. The agreement shouldn't directly or indirectly set watershed for any country, as Nile water and benefit sharing should be determined through a basin-wide agreement with all riparian countries. Water share question should be raised every time legally binding GERD operation agreement is demanded. Proposal for Nile Basin water sharing should be initiated by cooperative framework agreement signing members of Nile referent countries, and avoid legally binding energy production and delivery agreements as it converts energy to flow volume indirectly. So finally, what is the long-term outcome of downstream countries' hostility to upstream countries with current population explosion? It's not, in my view, it is not good for Sudan and Egypt to go to war with Ethiopia while it has control of the waters that come to their area. There is an example, Pakistan, a small dam expansion has been used to beat drought in Pakistan. This is a few days back reported. So the population pressure will increase upstream abstraction of water. So it would be to the interest of all countries to cooperatively work, share water, and expand cooperation into various economic ways. And so the hostility probably is not good for everybody. So that is the end of my presentation. I would like to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wossenu, for a very wide presentation, very wide topic from hydropolitics to engineering. I think I would highlight a couple of issues and go directly into question and answer session. One of important points you raised is one is for hydropower projects. I think the negotiation should always have been between the neighboring countries, that the closest country is the one which is affected. This is one point I took. And the other is the problem of feeling, your understanding of the feeling and operation is a little bit different from the understanding of many of us. I think you can highlight later on that. 640 a meter, the dam is at 640, and that has not been mentioned anywhere. Probably it's because I know you from the negotiation document that was in UN Security Council, most of the values are limited to 625. You might explain that later. And another important issue I can highlight is hydropower dams should not have a downstream control, whether irrigation or any hydropower, so that undermines the output of hydropower. I think on the other negotiation aspect, you have raised many questions and many important points. I would open the floor for discussion. I think we will monitor, me and Candice, and Safa would monitor who comes first and give floor to question and answer. The floor is open. Dejene Yemali has a question. Do you want to question?
You can raise your hand if you go to reaction and raise your hand if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Samu. I can proceed to ask the questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wossenu, for your presentation. My question is just is one question. Do the downstream countries have really reasonable concerns over the GERD than claiming their hegemonic status quo? If that is the case, should we pursue the negotiation and expecting a negotiated agreement over the GERD? Thank you.
We can take a few questions and
Okay.
then yeah.
Okay.
Samu, I see Alam raising his hand.
Alam?
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for a very informative and insightful presentation, Dr. Wossenu, as usual. So my question is, the one you presented is what's really proposed by Egypt in terms of filling and reservoir operations. The filling is basically agreed, even though it's not signed, the filling portion of the GERD. Have you seen any long-term reservoir simulation or proposal from the Ethiopian side? If we don't have, why we haven't really developed one, or are we keeping it as, you know, not to give our information out? So I just want to comment that one. If you have seen, I mean, an optimum operation scenario developed by the Ethiopian side. Thank you.
Okay, next, Sami Ahmed.
Yes, hello everybody. Good afternoon. My question was about this year's filling, the 13.5. I remember that last year's filling, the 4.9, was a little bit, in my point of view, was a little bit early, and the year was very wet, and that's why in Sudan a lot of floods and a lot of damages happened. Do you expect that this year the 13.5 will be also for flood mitigation? I mean, will do it in a proper, not a proper, but a better, a good way to do it to mitigate the floods in Sudan?
Wossenu, you can reflect on these three questions until I collect other questions.
All right. The first one is the GERD impact on downstream. The GERD is, as it is designed, is a power generating reservoir. I don't think Egypt has any concern about what GERD is going to do. But as I showed you earlier, Ethiopia has the capacity to build such a dam. It can build irrigation dams upstream and take its share of water for irrigation. So in order to cut that out using the GERD, it is internationalized as the GERD will decrease the flow downstream, which is not the case, but the objective is to block Ethiopia from using irrigation water in the future. So that is not explicitly stated, but that is the reason why all this resistance is there. Long-term simulation, that's very important. Hydropower dam, hydropower generation models have to be applied, and simulated results have to be part of the operation plan. But I'm not aware of those kind of simulation work. Maybe some more kind of supplement on this one is more familiar. And the filling, this is an interesting question, when to fill. When to fill, last time was filled at the right time when the runoff starts coming. If you want to stay to the last wet months, then you might lose the water and then you'll end up not filling the reservoir. So the best time would be start as early as when the wet season or the runoff starts, and try to get the amount you have to fill up and then release. Otherwise, it will be a gambling issue if you want to stay to the last month or couple of months at the end. So what happened in the Sudan, the GERD has helped. It hasn't added up to the problems Sudan has with the flooding. Well, that was the flood system issue, rather than GERD hasn't contributed anything to the flood of 2020. I think these are the questions. The three questions, did I address them?
I think you have addressed them. One question I asked was if I'm given an opportunity was that most of your demonstration on the reservoir filling and operation is limited to 625. And you explain why you have only limited to 625 while the dam full capacity is 640.
Yeah, no, that is, I forgot to mention it. The proposal has 625, the maximum. When I put a 625, if 70 billion cubic meter comes, you have to send everything. So the dam height is cut off at 625 rather than 640. So I should have mentioned that. So it is not just the filling takes many years or something. The height, the highest water level is cut off at 625, except in extreme cases where there is always 70 BCM year after year, and you collect half BCM every year, which is not really doesn't happen. So one thing what that proposal did was cut off the dam size to 625, which is by itself would have disqualified it. One reason why I discussed this DC proposal, two reasons. One, for historical documentation purposes, I have written a chapter on it. And two, it could come back. It is there still. I'm in the United States or in the Security Council. So it is pretty much alive, so that it is very important to know what exactly is inside that proposal.
Okay, I think I would add one if I have time. I think what you have to explain probably is that this document was taken from United Nations Council webpage that Egypt and the three countries presented to the UN Council, Security Council. So I think it's because of that. In most of Egypt's document, it's referred 625. I'm not sure. I haven't seen Ethiopian document that's submitted to you. So because this document is historical, the reference that you took is from those documents. So just to highlight. Okay, next I'll go to other round of questions. If you have questions, I think Kevin, you raised your hand. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Quick question. What is the status of communication right now between the GERD operation and Rosares in particular, since that's immediately downstream? Outside of the politics, is there communication between the engineers of the dam cascade currently, just for sheer safety reasons?
I don't see any other hand.
No, I see some. I see Mohammed Bashir and also Altaye.
Okay, Mohammed, please continue.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Wossenu, for this interesting presentation. My question is actually related to the flexible approach that you presented. Can such a flexible operating rule be formulated as a binding agreement? If yes, how? And if no, why? Thank you.
And then Altaye, please proceed. And after that, Dr. Wossenu would continue answering these questions or reflecting.
Thank you, Dr. Wossenu, for this wonderful presentation. And also, thank you, Dr. Semo, for the opportunity that I got. My question is just, do we really seriously look at Egypt's stand of which Egypt had been promoting? The Nile issue is a national security issue. Is really a national security issue? How far do we comprehend that, and how far do we make the public opinion that this is not the case. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Wossenu, please proceed.
All right. Communications between GERD and Rosares, I haven't heard anything else. This should be part of the operation plan agreement, or this communication has to be set up with information sharing, operation decisions, water levels, weather conditions upstream, and this has to be part of the agreement. It is very important that they share information for extreme events. So I'm not aware this should be part of the final operation plan. Flexibility in can a flexibility limit binding agreement on a reservoir operation? Yes, because there are a lot of unknowns. There is, for example, the Lake Okeechobee Reservoir operation has agreed upon regulation schedule or operation plan by all interested groups. To some extent, that looks like binding. This is the same people, the same groups in one country, but always there is deviation. For this reason or that, we have operated it outside the range. Too much hurricane came, too much rainfall, too little rainfall. So there is a plan that is agreed by farmers, coastal people, and cities which get water supply. There is an agreement, but legally binding that you go to court is something else. You can't do that because here we make a lot of errors at times. That season became dry than wet, and then you end up, farmers will have shortage of irrigation water. So then they are not going to court for that. We have this process of collecting climate prediction information, and I showed you what I do in that. If it was in error, so you just move on, explain and move on. That's why legally binding in terms of between countries where they can take you to court, it is not possible for a reservoir operation. It is meaningless, actually. And the last question is, Nile is a national security issue for Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. If Ethiopia gives up its rights of Nile water, its population will be 200 million in 20 years. People have to fight within Ethiopia. Either you fight with another country, or if you fight with your own people. So with fresh water shortage that is coming and present at the same time, each country has to make sure it defends its water interests. So it is a security issue for every Nile Basin country, actually. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you very much, Wossenu. Now there is one person who wants to ask question, Beleta. Probably, is there any person? And Wubishet, continue.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wossenu and Dr. This is a good presentations. I think I want to see some question and reflection on some of the discussions. One of the points is with the level of the water is 625 and 640. From my understanding, it depends on the season, on the time. If that table are working with at the end of the hydrology year, maybe 640 may not be an operator level, but if it is working at the end of the rainy season, like October, always it has to be coming. Otherwise, to make it the dam operated fully flexible with the system at the end of the hydrology year, like in June, that 625 may not be. So maybe those tables which we documented maybe have some time. So do you have some analysis with seasonality That's my question, one point of that discussion, because the seasonality has influence on the issues. Second, my other question is, what's your suggestion from your experience on this negotiation issues? What would be the suggestion to manage the binding agreement with the flexibility? How to possibly optimize and how to finalize the negotiation with adjusting these two things? Thank you.
Okay, we should continue.
You have to unmute yourself, Wubshet. We can't hear you.
You are muted.
Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you again. Wubshet, we can't hear you.
Okay, I think Wossenu, you can continue answering Bellet's question, and then we'll come back to Wubshet.
I think seasonality is not part of the plan, and it doesn't matter whether you start on October 1st, June 1st, or May 1st. It doesn't matter. The cycle doesn't matter at all. What is important is, suppose you are 625 at whatever that June 1st, October 1st, whichever date is, then if extreme flow of 70 comes, you are not holding anything. So I can't see how this that reservoir water level goes to 640 and gets operated between 640 and 625, 23 or whatever. So, so the seasonality, the cycle doesn't matter where you start year after year. The first few years, the first year or two might be, but then it becomes a cycle. So that seasonality doesn't matter as long as when it is at 625, if 70 billion, you hold 10 or 15 or 20 and send down 50, then it will go to 640 that way. Flexibility and legally binding agreement. Can we put that? No, the answer is no, because I have a good experience here that I told you. For the dam operator, it is unimaginable to have a legal document and work on that while the weather and everything else is changing. So a detailed operation plan should be developed. Concerns of downstream information sharing or during high flow times, what you can help out and everything else. Otherwise, you have to do a hydropower simulation, generating simulation on the reservoir, and decide how to operate it with the incoming water. So the guarantee the downstream people have is your operation plan. But it doesn't mean you'll follow that line by line, because the weather and your power demand, everything changes. So the whole concept of signing legally binding document on hydropower reservoir operation is not considerable.
Okay, I think what Belletta was saying in the first question was, if you, from those documents, refer 625 as a dam height, in actual sense, what I know is also is 625 is a water level that that has to reach by June. After that, when it refills, there is a chance it can reach to 640. But this misreading, if you can misread this, that means there is a loophole that anybody can read the full water level is 625, unless there is explicit presentation of 640 after filling and 625 in June. So is that what you're reading? You read that 625 is the full capacity from those documents? Wossenu?
Yeah, well, 625. Suppose you are at 625 and extremely wet 70 billion km, you have to send down that, meaning you will go down from 625 the rest of the season. So it has to be clearly put there that the reservoir will be filled up to 640 when extremely wet conditions, these conditions under this circumstance, that is the full reservoir. And then during the operation, the tables that are developed for operation should go within the range of the dam operation, not below 590, where you have to reservoir, your turbine can be damaged too. So unless that is, it is not there, it is not there. That's basically.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there, I will give, we have few minutes. I can give some for Mark and again, Ubishet. Mark, you can take your stage. Hello?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My comments will be on the geopolitics of the GERD. I was instrumental in the negotiations which led to the cooperative framework agreement on the Nile. So my interest has always been what would the impact of GERD be on the conclusion of the CFA, cooperative framework agreement. But that aside, let me go to one observation, minor, very minor, and that is the Central African Republic. According to my research, which I've literature search, which is included in my book on the bridge across the Nile, which can be obtained in Amazon. The Central African Republic is indeed one of the Nile Basin countries, except for the fact that its percentage of the area of the basin vis-a-vis the area of the entire Central African Republic is somewhere in the region of 0.01. But that aside, let me go back to the propaganda war and the diplomacy around GERD. The propaganda war is intense, and the diplomatic efforts to win appreciation and to win favors, not favors, but understanding by the lower riparian countries and of the GERD and Ethiopia are ongoing. But I must say that my observation is that at least from the propaganda war, Egypt has been has made a great effort in the sense that I operate from right now, when I talk to you, I'm in a village which is 1,000 kilometers from Dar es Salaam and maybe 200 kilometers from the nearest city. But of course, I'm available on the internet. When I search the Nile, just the word Nile in the Google, particularly Google News, I would say that I get about 80% of articles from Egypt, and perhaps 20% from Ethiopia. That is an observation which perhaps Ethiopia might wish to take into account. In terms of diplomatic forays, I've explained this in a chapter in my book, but of course, the diplomatic forays by Egypt are far more than what Ethiopia is managing. And I would say that, well, I was a bureaucrat in government and a politician during the time of the late Meles Zenawi. Then, of course, Ethiopia projected itself or could punch above its weight. But we hope that with the present regime and after the internal issues have settled, Ethiopia will be back again on the scene to the same extent as would be expected for a country which is extremely important in the Nile Basin. Let me go comment on the issue of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Let me put the following context for you, just historic context. The cooperative framework agreement was agreed upon essentially at Kinshasa, in Kinshasa. I was there as a Minister for Water and took part in the negotiations on behalf of the Upper Riparians. I headed the Upper Riparians discussions vis-a-vis Ethiopia, no, vis-a-vis Sudan and Egypt. And we said after 10 years, we had concluded the discussions. We went to Egypt after that for another meeting, and later went back again after 6 months to Sharm el-Sheikh. From Alexandria, went to Addis, and then we ended up in Entebbe and concluded the cooperative framework agreement. Now, I had a great difficulty, just to share with you, in understanding the position of the DRC, and sought even the assistance of my president in the negotiations with his counterpart in DRC, that was Kabila Jr. And I was sent there as an emissary twice after convincing my president that we needed to get DRC on board the cooperative framework agreement. It didn't work, but it's understandable. Congo is a large country, and only 1% of it, of the area, is the basin area in terms of the Nile Basin. So really, it's to it the basin is not that important, especially after the Congo, which is the Congo Basin itself, which is a very large basin. So what I want to say is that, of course, another issue is internal conflict within the DRC and the support that DRC has been getting from Egypt in the fight against all the by the government in the fight against all the invaders and all the problems problem makers in the east of DRC. I think the security has been paramount in the relationship between DRC and
yeah,
but what I want to say by way of conclusion is that I wish to agree. I'm in agreement with the speaker or the presenter today that DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, will become chair of AU. Since it has already many times and publicly declared that it supports Egypt in the matter of the conflict between the lower riparians and Ethiopia, but also even in the matter of the cooperative framework agreement, then DRC cannot be an arbiter in this particular issue. And hopefully it will be asked to diplomatically declare interest and leave other well-intentioned people to take over the issue of the negotiations, facilitation of the negotiations. I hope Ethiopia will stick to this matter as a matter of principle on its part. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry I gave you some time because you have a wider perspective on the Nile. I think it was important in interjection. So, and then finally, I will give Wubshet for a brief question. After that, we will close this session. Wossenu from Mr. Marks, I think you can answer.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah, please, you answer only on the question which he asked on.
Yeah, I have two things to say. One is CFA,
yes.
If GERD is, some agreement is signed with allocation to Egypt, CFA is no. That's what it is. So no water sharing should be implicitly or explicitly included in any kind of agreement, so that CFA can stay alive. On the Congo, what I like to say is the Congo River is likely to be diverted, join the Nile and join the market. And there are statements on that. AU might have to look into African water resources, study what kind of interests are from out there. And the Nile is part of the African resource grab. And the Congo will likely join the Nile by diversion. Yes.
Okay, finally, Ubshet, that would be last question for our today's session. After that, I will submit my floor to Professor Asaf.
Thank you. My question is actually related to the fishery and aquaculture development. So if there is anything, like there are technologies which could be like incorporated in the grid. So if there is other experience from other countries, I need to hear this aspect. Thank you.
Wossenu, you can proceed.
Yeah, I think this question, I have got this question in another presentation. Technologies such as the efficient use of water and all this. And from my experience in the United States, if whatever can be done over there is always below what is being done over here, which is sprinkling and furrow irrigation and all kinds of stuff. So that is a higher level of advancement to use expensive technology, but it is possible. Israel has a good experience of water use, but everybody has to do that on his own water share. Each country has to do all this efficiency increase within its water share.
Okay, with that note, thank you very much, audience, and thank you very much, Wossenu. I want to pass the floor to Asafa if he has something to say. Goodbye from me. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Dr. Wossenu and Semmo for the presentation and also for an excellent coordination and moderating. And thank you very much, everybody, again, for coming at this time. You know, sometimes it will be very difficult to actually catch up, you know, at late this time when you are in Ethiopia or in Tanzania, or maybe like Professor Mark said, when he's about very far from, you know, the nearest town. So I really thank everybody on behalf of my group and also the FIU Ministry of Environment. Thank you very much, Candice, for the excellent coordination and facilitation of this meeting. So we will have also our monthly meeting, hopefully next month. For the sake of balance, not to make it really from one point of view, we are reaching to a number of speakers. So we have, for instance, agreed to colleagues from Egypt, and also Mohammed Bashir, who is also participating here with us, and Kevin are actually very gracious enough to really find some time to give a talk on similar topics. So we'll bring diverse point of view to represent the different perspectives. So if you are really interested in hearing from anybody else that you know who really can do a good job in presenting, the Nile issues, or maybe experience even from other basin countries, please let me know. We will do everything to actually invite. So this is a scientific forum. It's all about discussions, and we'll be very happy to actually bring everybody who really can provide some knowledge for our audience. So again, thank you very much. Hopefully we will see you next month. We will again follow up with our announcements, and have a nice evening, or maybe morning here with us. Here is only about 9:23 here in the East Coast. I know it's very late in Africa. Thank you very much again. Thanks a lot. With that, we will conclude.